We're excited to be on another episode of the Midnight Founders podcast. Today, I'm really excited because it's a dear friend and a neighbor that we actually shared the same back fence for years. We've got Doug Edwards in studio, managing director of NRV Utah, which, for those that don't know, that is the company that owns Utah Valley Magazine and Utah Valley BusinessQ. So a huge media conglomerate. They recently purchased the entire entity from Jeanette Bennett.
Yes.
She's kind of a legend in the area. And we're excited to hear this story and Doug's story and how everything came to be. So welcome to the show, Doug. Good to have you on here.
Thank you. It's actually just a privilege and I was excited to have you call and invite me.
This is cool. We've had some great people on the show, but no one yet from BusinessQ. So this is a first. So we're excited to be here. And let's start with the first thing we go with is the 30-second pitch on what you're doing right now with BusinessQ, Utah Valley.
You know, it's kind of interesting. That's only one aspect of what I do. So when I took a little bit of time off after leaving my last organization called Smarty, I left after we left in early 2024.
And that was in Hawaii. A perfect way to take some time off.
We moved to Hawaii there for a little while we were building a house in Payson, and
we were sad to see you go from Mapleton. It's a sad day.
So I was just trying to figure out what next. What do I want to do next? I'm 63 this year, and you've been around the block a couple of times. And what do I want to do? I'm still got energy. I'm still excited about life. But what do I want to do? And I reconnected with the owner of really the first real company I worked with, or first entrepreneurial company I worked with, Test Out Corporation. And we just kind of reconnected and started chatting like we did for 23 years, working together, working side by side to build that company. And he said, he had sold it a few years back, and he has a lot of holdings, anywhere from agriculture to aviation to real estate to just raw land to buildings.
Serial entrepreneur.
Just serial entrepreneur. Just buys a lot of things, and he always had his eye on Utah Valley Magazine, and so he had some other ideas on where to go. That's just a piece of a puzzle that he would like to go, and he wanted to build again. And in those conversations, he said, would you be interested in joining back up? I know it's been 10 years since we worked together, but would you come back and manage all my assets and everything? And oh, by the way, I want to go on a mission. So he and his wife are serving a mission in Argentina right now.
So they're gone.
They're gone for the next 18 months, and I'm just managing everything from agriculture to magazines.
Why did he have his eye on Utah Valley Magazine for so long? What was the sizzle there?
Well, I think we all have heard of Utah Valley Magazine or BusinessQ, and a lot of people have heard of Jeanette Bennett and Bennett Communications and that, and they've been around for 25 years.
They're a staple for the community.
They're a staple. They're a cheerleader, so to speak, for the Valley, and we love the Valley. We ended up migrating here to go to school, and somehow our lives ended up being here, and our careers started to be here. We raised our kids here, and so we're real fans of this culture of Utah Valley, just this incredible environment here. And then to have the word perfects and the novels and the growth of UVU and BYU, and it's just such a vibrant community, and so we're fans of that. And Noel has always wanted to promote the goodness of this valley, and so that magazine was just part of a picture of wanting to take what the good of Utah Valley and promote that to, let's just say, the world.
I've been kind of diving into his LinkedIn profile, and Doug and I are part of a very exclusive club. People that speak Cantonese and Mandarin. So
Is that right?
yeah.
That's
I
cool.
served a mission in Hong Kong, and then I studied Mandarin at the Y.
Is
So,
that right?
so now I speak neither because it was 20 years ago.
Yes.
So
Isn't
both
that
of
the
them are
truth?
bad, but
Isn't that the truth?
yeah, I speak both.
Your mind just gets absolutely confused.
I'm sure when I got over there, it'd be like, because I speak Spanish too, and when I got over there, I'm sure it would pop back into my head.
So I'm glad that you sick gong gong dong hua.
Sick gong. Yeah. And
Here
hui
we go.
shuang.
Here we go.
Yeah, we could.
Hui shua, hey shua, guo yu.
Yeah. So anyways, I was diving into your LinkedIn profile, and it was really cool to see that. But
I was there a few years before you, I would imagine. 82 to 84.
oh, yep, a few years before me. Yeah. Not too many, but a few.
Were you even born then, Jake?
I was not, but we didn't need to bring that up. I was close.
Almost here.
Yeah. My real question is, I just looked through your kind of history and your LinkedIn profile, and did you, when you were going to school, did you think that you ended up going down this entrepreneurial path?
Absolutely not.
What were your plans?
You know, I had a little bit of a tough time. I was never really, how would you put it? Never the smartest kid in the school. Let's just put it that way. Never really applied myself a lot but I was always fascinated with things and always learning and applying things. But some just book learning was just not a real interest. But somehow I made it through high school, and then I got into the university and started doing okay, and learned that I was okay intelligent, okay smart, and but I thought that I didn't know really what I wanted to be. I toyed with the idea of law. I toyed with the idea of international relations because I liked international stuff, having served a mission in Hong Kong and having grown up in the military and lived in Europe and all places and traveled a lot. But it just kind of Chinese was what I was taking a lot in the classes. And I realized that if I just went and planned on doing some study abroad in China and at Nanjing University, that I could graduate at a certain, and then just go on for an MBA. And my father was a hospital administrator in the military. And I always liked going into his office, and he always had these nice offices with a number of, secretaries and helpers and staff members. And I just always pictured myself, I guess, as being a manager, a business manager of some type. So I went on to an MBA in
At Utah State, I might add.
Yeah, at Utah State.
Aggies all the way.
There you go. And can I say that they really love BYU up there? I mean, yeah, they promote it in every article.
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
newspaper.
Yeah, exactly.
A little tongue in cheek there, but it was a great experience, and again, I thought I would go corporate. I had these thoughts and ideas of just going corporate. Never thought I'd actually live in Utah. Not that I didn't want to. It's just I thought I'd be off and about.
Where did you grow up, Doug? I don't know if you established that.
All over,
All
right?
over, yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Military.
Born in San Antonio, Texas.
So there's nowhere that you really call home
No.
other than here.
No. Lived in Germany for 6 years. Lived in Colorado for 4 years. Lived in Texas in different places in Texas, and then New Mexico and
Got it.
Arizona. Just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Nomad.
I really was, but that's part of my personality too. That kind of helped develop who I am, and change is not scary to me. It was just normal. My wife teases me because I want to rearrange the room in our bedroom or whatever 3 years or something like that. I've got to have a big project. But anyway, I was at MBA school, and in between, I got hooked up with a group in Arizona, this little startup that was a neighbor to my dad that was called Sky Mall. I don't know if you ever remember
The
Sky
magazines and the
Mall.
airplanes?
Yes. He had this idea of putting magazines in the seat backs of airplanes and order things. Because at that time, they were just coming out with phones on the seat backs of the airplanes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so he had this idea, and he it was in the early stages, and he asked if I'd come down and do a marketing internship where I'd look at expanding markets for them. And it was still in the startup phase. And so for a full summer, I went down there and had this idea that if you've got this captivated audience in an airplane, you can't go anywhere. And so the magazine is a nice thing to pick up and read. Where else would that work? And I thought, well, hotel rooms. Why not have that catalog in a hotel room? If you're going to have warehouses near all the airports in the country, why not have, that's close to these hotels. So I came up with this idea called, original room service. And it was just these catalogs you could have in the room there. And so I built a business plan around that. And that was actually my business plan. My final project for my MBA school was this idea of room service.
Very cool.
So that was introduced me to kind of, again, an entrepreneurial environment of growth.
Yeah.
But I had it in my mind. I was a student assistant or teaching assistant for the finance professor, and he oversaw this internship back in Wall Street, where you would be a utility stock analyst, and anybody who went there, it was one a year that they would give, and anybody who went there immediately was hired on to some firm after their internship, and usually they took a second-year student that was graduating, moved you back there, gave you an allowance. You worked on Wall Street, and these guys were retiring 5 to 10 years later. They just did really well. And I was the shoe-in. I did everything I needed to. The professor liked me. I worked for him.
Good for you.
And then at the very end, this first-year student came in who was just a superstar, just the smartest guy I've ever seen in my life. And
A
his
prodigy.
father was a trading, ran an investment company. So he just knew the business. And they said, I think we're going to take him. And they said, but you're a close second. You can be on standby if it doesn't work out. And I was like, well, now what do I do? And so I had to figure out, graduating with an MBA in 91, 92, that it was a recession going on.
Oh, yeah.
MBAs were kind of a dirty word if you didn't have experience. And
really quick, Doug, before you move on from that point too much. So with your time at Sky Mall, has any of that skill set or any of that exposure transferred over to Utah Valley Magazine now that you've kind of gone full circle?
it all
Or not really?
Oh, it all plays together. You have to solve a problem, and having to put together a catalog and looking at that process of a catalog and what's going to work for this group or this group. Yes, it's when the magazine came on, I'll tell another story at some point in time of how Test Out got its beginning and how I first started with them. And we were kind of in the magazine business a little bit. So it's full circle, really. So these things, it's all learning. You're pulling from all these life experiences you've had that make you who you are. And then you have a skill set.
And preps you up for almost the next opportunity, doesn't it?
It does. And in my life, I could not have scripted my career. I wanted to, like you asked, I wanted to. But it's just the opportunities, kind of the doors closed in one area and they opened in another area, and you take those paths and the rest is history.
That kid probably had a great career,
Yeah.
but it was the biggest blessing for you.
Yeah.
That you didn't end up down that
Isn't that the hardest thing to admit sometimes is, you had this goal, this idea, and it turns out to be a blessing. It turns out that probably my skill set and my experience, having done the odd, even construction jobs, here and there, and learning different things, kind of helped me be that COO type of a person, the chief of operations. I know a little bit about every little aspect of that business, and I can feel for the worker who's doing this or that or whatever. I've felt it. I've been there a little bit. I can speak their language.
That's cool.
But anyway,
So out of MBA school, you're looking for the next thing.
I looked for and I was like pushing men's clothes at JCPenney's in the evenings. We're pregnant with our first child, trying to figure out what's going to happen. And we had the child. Well, I didn't have full-time job and just the hard days. But, and then WordPerfect called and said they opened up. They had gone on a hiring freeze, but they opened back up and asked me if I'd want to join. So here I am with an MBA and becoming a support person at WordPerfect, supporting laser printers,
And that was their peak, right? Those 90s?
Yep, the early 90s, they were peaking and they were doing really, really well. But they offered so much training and learning. And so I took advantage of every aspect of that. I remember walking out of one class, scratching my head going, I know they're talking about HTML, but I still don't understand what that is. This was in 92.
Sure.
Really before the internet even.
Yeah, emails weren't even a thing at that point.
Yeah, and HTML was what? What were they talking about? But again, learning and preparing. And then a year after I was with WordPerfect, this small company calls me up and says, hey, we know you got an MBA, you've done Novell training, you speak Chinese. We're trying to expand our cooperative magazine advertising business into Asia. You interested in joining with us? And that was like the fourth employee of Test Out in 1993. And
that's when you got to know Noel. Is that right?
And Noel's the one that called me.
That's awesome.
We'd kind of run into each other when I lived in El Paso, and we kind of knew each other, maybe saw each other at BYU here and there, but didn't really know it. We weren't friends necessarily, but he knew of me. And the rest is history. And then I was stuck. I was just kind of thrown into the entrepreneurial world as sort of that, again, right hand, that person that wanted structure in the nebulous world of entrepreneurship.
I think there's a lot of people that live in that space.
Yeah.
That, would have, very entrepreneurial tendencies, but maybe are not that visionary.
Yeah. Kind of the executors or the implementers. And honestly, they're so important because they put systems and processes in place to carry out the mission of the company, which wouldn't otherwise be possible. Super critical, folks.
Keep the visionary in check.
That's right. Wrangle them, if you will.
And it is a chore.
That's right.
It is very different and very necessary, and you need to have the right entrepreneur that can see that. A lot of people can't see beyond themselves sometimes, and they're so passionate about what they do, and they're very sure of themselves. These are people that are willing to put everything on the line.
A personalities.
Yes, absolutely.
Very taking.
And can be in your face sometimes.
That's right.
And they don't see the world the same way, but that's what makes them an entrepreneur. And with for some reason, my skill set, I understand it and I can get it, and I can talk to them and I can challenge them in ways that they don't necessarily fire me after the first day, but we can have really, really firm conversations. But I have never shied away from that.
Those crucial conversations.
Absolutely.
It's kind of the book that everyone refers back to when they start talking about this topic, and it is a skill, and not everyone does it well.
Well, and I have to say that with my personality, I'm never really, probably to my detriment, I'm not self-serving. I'm not the great negotiator for my own interests. I tend. Have you ever heard of Strength Finders 2.0? The book,
Yeah,
that
for sure. Jake, does that ring a bell to you?
34 strengths or something like that. And my number one is harmony. I would rather bring people together to achieve a common good. And then that's the focus. That's what we want to achieve. Let's enjoy the ride. Let's have fun. But that's the common good. I hate to say this, but my 34th is empathy. Isn't that funny? I thought I'm empathetic, but the guy that I was talking to that said that, he goes, no, it doesn't mean you're not empathetic. It's just that it means you don't lead with that. You're more concerned about the greater good of the organization as opposed to just focusing on the one person here. But then that comes in. He goes, don't think you're not empathetic. And
which has probably served you really well in the positions you've held.
Well, it allows you to kind of step back, look at a bigger picture. And even when it comes to maybe employee issues, if you can kind of put it in perspective and say, this person's just really not working out. And I bet you they'd be a lot happier somewhere else. That's where the empathy comes in. You want the best for them, but you can't necessarily kill an organization just for the one person. I know it's sad to say, and
For sure.
there's somebody
Yeah,
questioned
the tail cannot wag the dog.
You just have to be
kinda thing.
real about it.
Mhm.
It allows me to be that way, I guess. And so I think when I'm challenging an entrepreneur, they get it that I'm not necessarily being mean or self-serving. I'm really pushing for at the end of the day, their own pocketbook, their own growth, their own well-being.
As employee 4 at Test Out, I'm sure you saw, because they grew significantly, right, over the time that you were there. And I'm sure throughout that journey, you saw a lot of tough times.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of those kind of entrepreneurial moments, the Midnight Founder moments.
Midnight
that we
Founder
talk
moments,
about,
yep.
Yeah. Where you're just trying to solve problems.
Oh my goodness.
At midnight.
Yes. Or longer.
Or longer, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My wife will attest to that. We lived in Pleasant Grove and our offices were in Pleasant Grove. I'd go home and have dinner and put the kids down, and I'd go back to the office and I'd work till 3 a.m. It's what you do. The 30s are such a busy time of life. In your early 40s, you're in the 30s, you're really just trying to get things solidified.
Multitasking to the extreme.
Oh my goodness. And then that's when you're having your family, and that's when you have to focus in so many areas and stay grounded in all this. And it's just so hard. But yes, we saw bad times. The first real challenge was 2 months into my career at Test Out. So I say, okay, well, Australia is an English speaking country. So let's focus on Australia first. They've got a good IT world there. We would do cooperative magazine advertising. So we'd do a full page spread, and we would have Novell authorized education centers listed in this big spread, and we would do it geographically. So it looked like they were the premier training center in that area. And so they would pay a premier price to be in our full page spread. And so we wouldn't list all of them, just those that paid to play, and we'd vet them out and make sure they were a good company. But so I go to Australia and I'm selling this same idea. And they've got some great magazines down there, and Novell had a good presence down there. And we go down there, we get on the plane, and Noel and I, and Noel Vallejo was the owner of Test Out, and we get on a plane and we go visiting all these companies, and we're having good success. People are signing up; they want to be part of it, and so we spend almost 2 weeks there, and we get all these people to sign up. The day before we leave, I call up everybody just to verify. Every single one of them dropped out, and they were mad at me.
They hadn't signed something?
They signed something, but they said, you were from Novell. And I said, no, we did not. I said, we do advertising for Novell, and you can use your marketing dollars from Novell for our advertising. But I never said we were from Novell, but they were upset. And Novell had called every single one of them and said, hey, we're going to do a cooperative program in our next conference. So you can choose to do this group, or you can go wait and see what we have. So they took our business away.
They kind of undercut you.
They did.
Right then and there. That's terrible.
I don't know if they just didn't like the Yanks, coming in and taking over their market, and doing advertising. But long ride home from Australia, 2 months into a new career, and I just lost all my business down there. So we spent the next couple of months trying to figure out, okay, we know we're going to have a cap with advertising. What are we going to do? So we had the idea, well, let's create our own training. There's books out there. We can create a video. And so we actually created self-study training materials for Novell's technologies on VHS tapes, and we added books, and we added a little test preparation software on a 3.5-inch disc floppy, and created this little bundle called Test Out. And we started competing with our customers. They didn't like it. They were upset with us, but we knew that we had to do something different. And then as time went on, that turned out to be, delivering it on CD and DVD, and then Noel heard about this, simulation-based training, and so he went up and found this PhD student from China up at Utah State, and we're talking with professors and brought her in, and then we started adding simulation-based training, hands-on learning to our, and then we were a little ahead of the time, and it was costly, so we still weren't making a bunch of money on that, but then we hit the market really well. We brought on Microsoft networking training, and then Microsoft took us to a new level. So we grew like 4 times 1 year with that.
Wow.
But then
It's surprising they didn't have something already internally. Was there just a gap there? You
for
filled the gap?
Microsoft, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
They had come out with their own networking software. So that had lagged Noel's technologies. But when they really pushed this what was it? NT4 is what they called it, Networking Technologies 4. That version kind of went through the roof, and our training went through the roof. And so we had a lot of good days, hired a lot of people, and then another bad thing happened, and we almost lost the business. So I don't know if you want me to tell a little bit of that one, but that was
Go for it. Yeah.
that actually includes Central Bank, to be honest.
Let's hear that story.
We had done well, but there was 2 owners at the time, so it was Noel and another gentleman.
Shout out to Noel, by the way. We haven't given him proper shout out.
Hey, Noel's a good friend, good man. They weren't seeing eye to eye in a lot of ways, and things had gotten tough. The industry had changed on us a little bit again with some technologies. Microsoft was late with their 2000 product that they were wanting to come out with, and so the market kind of slowed down, and we were just really going through a difficult time, and we overextend ourselves probably a little bit too much on things, and then the owners were having a little bit of a dispute, and so sometimes when mom and dad are fighting, so to speak, the kids feel it, and that's kind of how the company was. The 2 owners are fighting, and not fighting, but just disagreement. You kind of feel it. And so there was a lot of lost momentum.
They weren't aligned at all.
Yeah. And that gentleman ended up leaving, and we ended up with a lot of debt and things that we had to climb out of. And then the market got worse, and then we couldn't market as well as we were doing. And everybody's waiting for Novel's 2000 technologies to come out, and finally this company back east had garnished our accounts, and so one night,
Did you have like a line of credit set up, or?
We had lines of credit and whatever else, but they garnished our bank accounts, and we were with First Security Bank, and we went over and we had nothing, nothing in the bank, and we went over and said, were any checks deposited today? And they said, yeah, we've got these. Can we just take that? And we went over to another bank and kind of opened up an account. So we had some money, and then we had to figure out, I already knew that the tough times were coming. So I'd already kind of created a list of who we needed to keep and how. I'd already been kind of pushing Noel for a number of months on, let's live within our means. If we're going down, let's just. So we were making less than $200,000 a month, at the time, and we had quite a staff of 50 people or more, and
Wow.
And so it was, and we'd already been down some. So it was just one of those dark days where it was right before the holidays, and we did one of those, bad things that companies are always, say you're heartless to let people go right before the holidays, but we had no choice, and so we had this list, and I'd already created this list of, who we could cut and still survive. And so we pulled that out and we redid it, and we actually cut a little bit deeper. And Noel said, let's cut once, not just many times, let's just cut once. And so we brought all of our expenses down below 200,000. But at the same time, I'd gone to Noel and said, we're not doing any marketing, but we got these big lists. Let's at least do something. We've got lists, we've got brochures over there in the bank building. We had our own stuffing machine, and stuff like that. So let's just do something. And then that got Noel thinking. And so he went and negotiated a list. So in this dark time, he kind of negotiated this really, really good mailing list that turned out. And so we had this marketing set up and we had sent it out. Then our bank was garnished, our accounts were garnished. We let over half the staff go. We went down to like 18 people or 19 people. And then the holidays hit. Microsoft had released their product a month or so before that. We had finished our product by that time, and the marketing hit, and we went from $200,000 for less than $200,000 a month to $600,000 to $700,000 a month in January, and then in February is like $700,000 to $800,000 a month, and then it just continued on. So we went from the depths of being a few million in negative equity in the organization at the end of 2000, I guess. Is that 2000? And then to by the middle of 2001, we kind of broke even. And we were kind of at even in equity. And so we had a really good run, and we were able to pay things off and start working with the creditors. And that was my job. I was the kind of VP of operations and finance at the time. So I took over all the finance when the other owner left. And we kind of worked our way out of a hole. And then...
And Central Bank helped you? Is that how that comes into play?
First Security Bank was sold to Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo looked at our finances and our year-end statements from the year before, which were bad. And they sent us a letter after the fact, after they withheld a couple $100,000 in credit card payments for chargebacks, which we never had chargebacks, but they claimed that they were holding it for chargebacks. And then they canceled our account. And then we had all this money that was coming in through credit cards that we couldn't process. And we were climbing out of this hole, but we couldn't do anything. And here's another challenge that hit us. And I don't want to say problems. I like to use the word challenge because challenge means you can overcome it, right?
Right.
And another challenge. And we went the rounds with Zions Bank and all these other banks that just they string us on for weeks, and then they would say, no, sorry, you just don't have the financials. And I was down in Provo or something like that, and I saw Central Bank, and my wife's family is from Springville, and I think they had talked about the Packer family and before, and I just thought, I'm gonna go in there. And I just walked up there, and I said, can I talk with Matt? And they were like, well, let me see if he's available. And he was available. And I walked in, I said, here's the situation. Here's where I'm at. I'm telling you straight.
You just laid it all out.
I laid it all out, laid out some of the history and everything. And I said, I need to process hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit cards, and nobody will take me. And we have not had chargebacks. I can show you that we don't have chargebacks and things like that. And he goes, let me see what I can do. And within a day, I was talking with, I think it was Jared Peterson or something like that, and they took us on. And we started to climb out of that. And then we were hit with a lawsuit from the previous owner, and at the same time, and that went on for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
It's all about challenges. I always say in business and entrepreneurship, it's about relationships, relationships with those you work with. And you keep those, because every place I've worked, I've almost had to bring people with me or reconnect, because you build those relationships with your vendors, like your banks and your, everybody that you can build those trust, your accounting groups. And then it's opportunities. You look for opportunities. You're constantly looking for opportunities, which means that you're going to change some things sometimes. But then the last one is the challenges. You will have nothing but challenges all along the way.
And I think that's the sign of a good entrepreneur, is how quickly you can overcome those challenges and then just keep growing and keep building from there,
And then, and then we kind of got through that a little bit. The initial, we got the credit cards going again, so we started growing again, and then 9/11 hit.
It's just
And,
one thing after another. That's just entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
though.
it's
It
It's just
is.
the theme of entrepreneurship.
one
It's
after
like,
another.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we had a conference over in Europe, at the same time, and they were saying, "Oh, should we cancel it or
Were
not?"
you? Oh, you weren't in Europe at the time.
No, and
Okay.
in September, and we had a conference in October, and in my mind, I was just like, "No, we're not going to be afraid of this thing. We're going to overcome this. So let's go to the conference. Let's just show we're not afraid of this thing." And
Cool.
we went over to Europe and that, but by the end of the year, we had turned a negative, few million equity into a positive.
That's awesome.
Few
That's
million
amazing.
equity.
You have a really interesting perspective. Just having worked with multiple different entrepreneurs, and having kind of that first seat, watching it happen. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur that's just getting started today from like the examples that you've seen over your career?
Oh, there's so much, but it's so important when I talk about those three things I mentioned. You just know it's going to be challenges, but you've got a vision, and you got to be clear on that vision. I know it's not going to be 100%, and it's going to change. Just know that it can change. That's okay, but people have to buy into something, and it's not just your personality. Sometimes that'll go for a certain point of time, but it's got to be concrete. What are you really trying to do? What are you trying to do? Simon Sinek and others, will say, find your why, and that's what people are buying into. And if you're passionate about it, people will buy into that. So just be ready. It's not going to be an easy road. But don't forget your team. Don't forget those who can help you get there. And find the good team, not just your best buddy. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you don't want to do it with a family member. So I've been there too. And you just got to be careful. Find somebody you can trust. And I always say, look for that right-hand person, that somebody that can be there with you, that's got the dumb personality that I do, that, is willing to take on ownership, even though I don't have ownership, so to speak. I own what my responsibilities are. And that can help. I remember reading a great article in the Harvard Business Review about the role of that second hand person, that person that's on your right hand, and how important that is. And everybody ought to really pay attention to that, because it's going to take more than you. It's going to take more than you. It's about the team. The team is going to get you there. And so you find somebody who can read people, who can bring the right people in, that can be that other, set of eyes to say, something's not right about this candidate, or hey, I really, really like this one because this. And then knowing that the people that you have today may not be the people you have in 2 years or
At the
3
next
years.
level. Yeah.
It is, because every level changes in
That's
the
right.
organization. So yes, give people an opportunity to grow, but realize too that the organization, the health of the organization, if you can make that successful, you're helping so many people in so many ways. So, your team, know that you just don't have a crystal ball. There is no crystal ball in business, and anything can hit you at any time for any reason. Somebody can sue you at any time for any reason. And it may be frivolous, but yet it's consuming.
And takes resources.
It does. Sure. But those types of things will happen. You don't have a crystal ball. Do the best you can. Understand the issues. Have a good team around you. Listen. Be vulnerable.
You mentioned that before the show. Talk to us
Absolutely.
about that vulnerability
be
piece.
vulnerable in your role, but yet decisive. And then trust your gut. It really comes down to that gut feel. Learn to trust your gut. And if you make a mistake, live up to it. And when you acknowledge your mistakes, you learn from that acknowledgement. You put it out on there that you are an open book, and people will migrate to
It
that.
definitely resonates with people for sure.
It does.
And builds trust.
Yeah.
So Doug, I do want to get to, and we're coming up on time here, but I want to get to, Utah Valley Magazine. Sounds like you had a quick stint, or not even quick, but your next big milestone was Smarty. Is that right?
That was and that was actually a fun run, because we
Tech
had so
company.
much, tech company, SaaS, love SaaS concepts. We had a great product, and they just needed to grow from like that 20-25 person mentality, and with revenues at less than 10 million, and then to over that 5-year period, we grew it from with our own revenue. I'd never really worked with capital before, so these are all self-made organizations and
Bootstrapped.
self-funded. Yep.
From the beginning.
And so that's been my weird career too, is that I've never really been a fundraiser. But we grew that company to 100 in 5 years. When I left, 100 people and a brand new building, and 4 times the revenue that we had. Oh, well, over 4 times the revenue that we had when we first got there, and just the sky was the limit.
Very cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's the vision now that you've taken over Utah Valley Magazine, BusinessQ? What is the vision for that entity now for the Valley? Because I know that, and with the caveat of, as periodicals and the magazine industry is somewhat shrinking, right? It seems like there's a lot of things you have to overcome there.
It's interesting. You find generally a little bit of a resurgence. So people will automatically think it's a dying breed, but there are people that still like that tangible magazine. And if somebody's picture, or you have an article in a tangible magazine, it sometimes even means more than having it on the internet. It's
I think for sure it does. I mean, just think about like the amount of content that's online. Like somebody does an article with you in it online, it doesn't feel that special.
But if you're picked out to be in a magazine that has a limited circulation or something like that, again, it kind of goes back to that idea of being the best, in your area. And so, anyway, there's positives there, but really, what it is when we took over the magazine. To me, I was like, it's about relationships. It's about connections. It's about a network. AJ, you and I know each other. We've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
If I have a problem, and your name comes up in my mind because you've been to these things, I'm going to reach out to you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we do. We get to know people in the industry, and we have had amazing people on the cover, and we've done stories of so many more, and we have advertisers, and we have people that buy the magazine and subscribe to it. How do we build connections with that, and then how do we use those connections to further Utah Valley? So what are we doing with those who have been on our magazine cover? Are we keeping relationships? What are we doing? I just happened to be at a soccer game of my grandson. By the way, shout out to my daughter Addie, who just had our 7th grandchild.
Wow.
So a little boy this week.
Congrats.
I know.
That's
kind of
cool.
fun. I gotta give a shout out to my daughter Addie and her husband Brett and their little son Crew.
That's amazing.
First one. So, but anyway, we were at another grandchild's soccer game. Our grandson Hank, our football game, and Noelle Picus Pace was sitting over there. My wife goes, "Oh, that's Noelle Picus Pace." I went, "Well, she was on the cover of one of our magazines." So I just went over there and I chatted with her for a moment and told her who I was. And
opens a lot of doors, I'm sure.
In the magazine, yes,
Yeah.
it does, right? And that's another thing, that you have connections now.
Mm-hmm.
You have an open door. You can make a phone call and people will answer that phone. And Noel's going, "Oh, I'm I'm writing a new book and I'd love to reconnect with you guys. Oh, that'd be fun. And so I went back to the team and I said, that's an example of what are we doing with the relationships that we have formed. We have them on the cover and then we never talk to them again.
You have a huge database and people
Yes.
for sure.
Yes. And they know people.
Yeah.
So how are we going to now organize this? There's a lot of groups out there like the Chamber of Commerce, the Silicon Slopes, the people that are kind of creating a bunch of these organizations.
Tribe House and Trust and
there's all sorts of things, and we don't necessarily want to compete in that way. We want to build connections that are going to be meaningful to accomplish great things and to really promote the good things that this valley represents. And so I said, what are we doing with these? And they said, well, why don't we just take the back page and do a where are they now? Or an update on who was on our cover 10 years ago or whatever it was. And I said, great, let's continue reaching out that we have a living relationship with them instead of just this one and done type of thing.
That's great.
And so those are things
Smart.
that we hope to do. And we hope to, a lot of this stuff is a little bit nebulous again, the world I hate living in, where I don't know the structure of it, but we want to promote this not only here, but to the world. We want to build the opportunities for people here in Utah and give a voice to the student that wants to write an article. Hey, put an article out there on our website or on, this, and we'll promote you, We want to create opportunities, open it up for people.
That's cool.
If people want to learn more about the magazine or how to get involved, how do they get in touch with you guys?
They can go up to the website, NRV Utah. There's nrvutah.com. There's a section up there that if you're interested in wanting to participate or that you can send us a note from there. There's links to that.
And you're on all the socials too, right?
Yeah. And, and if we just have such great people. They're absolutely wonderful. This is the easiest acquisition I've ever done because they just know what they're doing. And why change something that you add new things, you give them a bigger picture of where we could go with it. You're not just a magazine in a few events a year. What else can we do and be? What can we migrate into? Can the online be a little bit better? But Greg Bennett, our editor-in-chief, and then I think
So he transferred over.
Yeah, Bailey Merrill. You probably know
Bailey's
Bailey.
great.
Everybody knows Bailey. She's just incredible, and she's over our BusinessQ magazine and associate editor for the Utah Valley magazine. But we just have great people, and they want to be connected.
It's
awesome.
interesting on that note, just that acquisition, so many founders or entrepreneurs struggle because like Jeanette Bennett, they are the face of the organization.
Yes.
But she was able to build such a well-oiled machine that it could also function really well without her, which made the acquisition pretty nice, right?
A lot of people don't realize that she did not have as much daily interaction with the magazine or control of the magazine for many years. She'd kind of turned that over to Greg and the team, and she would still write a little bit here and oversee it and give the final reviews and be involved in some of those meetings. So she wasn't like absent. It's just that her personal brand was growing a lot, and she was busy, and she was sitting on a lot of boards, and she
Colliers and those things
and then
came up.
then she went with Colliers and that, and so it was a good time for her to move and to transition away from it, and we hope we're good caretakers of that brand as we move forward.
Cool.
She's a wonderful person and just built a great team.
She is incredible.
She's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. This has been fun.
I
Good
hope
luck.
I touched on some of the things you wanted to hear.
This is awesome. No, this is perfect. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Good luck.
Thank you.